Greetings, beloveds. This is Amy Caryn Johnson, the Earth Channel, with another message from Gaia today, and we will begin again now with a poem. Everyone wants love, but few want to work. Everyone wants to be completed, but few want to be the link. I have been there, I have done that, until I left rather than combat. Then I became both anima and animus. Now I love me, and I am fabulous. So all that is left is to share with others, to find those souls with compatible druthers. So last week I made the shift to a new series, and I tried to introduce my take on bringing together modalities including Western astrology, Vedic astrology, and human design. In the previous series, 9-part series, I had been focusing primarily on human design, which typically uses tropical calculations, zodiac, which is typically associated with Western astrology. However, I really like Vedic astrology. I think it has a lot to share, a lot of wisdom, and it goes back further, I believe. And I explained that one of the main reasons I like it so much is that when you use the sidereal calculations or zodiac, which is typically used with Vedic astrology, you are keeping up with the precession of the equinoxes, which shows you where the stars actually are in the sky, as you can see on a star app, as opposed to Western astrology, which has not kept up with the precession of equinoxes and is almost an entire sign later or early, depending on how you want to look at it. It gets a little confusing. I spoke about how right now we have a lot of planets actually in Capricorn, not Aquarius. So that's where I typically lean towards, at least sidereal, if not Vedic astrology. And I also explained Rahu and Ketu, the north and south nodes of the moon. So if you'd like to catch up on that, please go back and watch my previous video and post. I'm not going to go over that story again. I explained that Rahu is in my 7th house, and in my younger years, it caused me to really pursue all kinds of relationships rather naively. And now that it has matured for me, because I passed the age of 42, I am now not so much going after relationships so voraciously. In fact, Ketu is now transiting my 7th house. Ketu, the south node of the moon, representing more detachment as opposed to hunger or addiction. And I currently really don't have much interest in relationships in general, although I have a universal feeling of love for everyone. And so what I'd like to focus on today is how self-love will lead us all to whatever kind of love we need and want. If we do it out of desperation, that's not really self-love. Desperation comes out of a lack of self-love. So when we want something, we must love it because we must want it out of love for ourselves. But we also need to acknowledge that we always will need other people and need to depend on other people for things, especially the older we get. But it doesn't have to be in a committed, marital necessarily relationship. It can be friends, it can be other relatives, it can be neighbors. We need to expand our vision of love, our definition of love, to encompass the entire community, at least, if not the entire world. So I always encourage everyone to have love in their lives as much as possible. But if you look at my chart, for example, it indicates that perhaps a marriage might not be in the cards for me, at least in this late stage of later stage of my life. I have had 2 marriages in the past in my younger life. And that is echoed and mirrored again in my Navamsha chart, which is a Vedic concept. The Navamsha chart is the 9th divisional chart. It is only accurate if you have an exact birth time and you're using a good Ayanamsha, which is a calculation point. Even within Vedic astrology and sidereal zodiacs, there are slight differences. And I have, excuse me, been comparing different Ayanamshas just to see, but it appears that the Lahiri one seems to resonate the most with me as far as this divisional chart, this Navamsha chart. The Navamsha chart is representative of ourselves as we get older, who we become as we become more and more mature, as we heal our inner child, as we heal our different wounds. Also representative, the Navamsha chart is also representative of marriage, but I believe that that can be metaphorical. It's assuming that a lot of us are going to get married in later life, but if we are able to incorporate that other side of ourselves, regardless of whether you're homosexual, bisexual, or heterosexual, if you identify as female, you have a masculine side. If you identify as masculine, you have a feminine side. And so incorporating that into yourself makes you more of a whole person, and that would be reflected in your Navamsha chart. So looking at my Navamsha chart, the nakshatras are called moon signs because they're most relevant for the moon. There are 27 of them, so the moon goes through one of them each day of the month, approximately. The nakshatra of Uttara Bhadrapada. I hope I'm saying that approximately correct. And I also checked, it's also in the hexagram 17. And both of these speak to leadership and seeing the big picture where you're able to accept what each person uniquely brings to the table in any endeavor. And so I am meant to pursue this sort of leadership and bringing people together and bringing all these different views together. And that is something that, you know what, I'm sorry, I said Rahu is there, but Jupiter is there. And the reason I looked at Jupiter for this is because Jupiter for a female represents the animus side, the masculine side. And so that is indicative of how I become a more whole person. So Jupiter is the one in Uttara Bhadrapada and in hexagram 17 in this overlay that I did. And I'll probably show that to you. But leadership, bringing together people, and that's what I feel like I have been doing more and more with these posts, even before I started making videos with my blogs on Facebook. And so I think that has contributed to my feeling of wholeness, loving myself, and not having such a voracious desire to be in a relationship to have someone else complete me. And yet, as I mentioned last week, with K2, once it leaves my 7th house, I may still have more of a desire to be in a relationship, but I am confident that I will not settle for anything less than a healthy relationship at this time, or at that time. And that means looking for someone else who is also whole, who has embraced that other side of himself, or herself, potentially, but who loves themselves, and we come together because we have things to share. And so I'm not necessarily just talking about possible romantic relationships, but friendships, a community, people who we can depend on each other. And knowing that everyone needs other people in their lives. It doesn't have to necessarily just be one person. But hopefully, with a community, with friendships, all of that, and maybe with a romantic relationship also, you can achieve that wholeness for each person and then coming together to share in ways that enhance each other, and yet not in ways that you need in that needy sense, not in codependent ways, not in ways where you are going to feel the need to coerce the other person, to be with you or to do things for you or to complete you, when that is not their path and maybe not their strength, maybe not even in them to do it in that way, and not healthy, probably. So I hope you can see that difference. I think now we'll go ahead and meditate and connect with Gaia, Mother Earth, and see what she has to share about this matter. I'll invite you to take with me a few deep breaths. So Gaia is reminding me to share with you that if you identify as masculine, then you would look at Venus in your Navamsha chart to find your anima, that more feminine part of yourself. And you can look at both Venus and Jupiter to identify how to become more of a whole person. Maybe it's not feminine or masculine that you lack in any way, but if you look at the sign that those planets are in that chart, or potentially even in your birth chart, you can perhaps identify where you're lacking. And I want to remind everyone here, Gaia wants me to remind you all, that this is all coming from a desire to connect with the diversity of life and to appreciate the diversity of life, with the belief that there are no bad signs, there are no bad hexagrams, gates. There is nothing truly bad in life. There are different combinations that can absolutely be challenging, but those challenges help us to grow and to discover more of who we are, both individually and as a collective. And so whenever you find yourself challenged, whenever you find yourself opposed or having a big charge with something, take a breath, connect with Gaia, and maybe take a day, take some time to really reflect on why that situation or thing or person is giving you such a big charge, and what it might be asking you to look at within yourself. Only by doing this, only by embracing this diversity and embracing all the different combinations of people, feelings, thoughts, actions, can we truly fully come to love ourselves, and love others unconditionally. And again, it doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean that we don't say no to others at times. There are ways to express these different energies in a way that is hurtful, and we should always strive to express all of these energies with love in ways that are not harmful or hurtful to anyone, including ourselves. And that is possible with all of those energies. One of the other bodies of work that is similar to some of the things shared here is the gene keys. And so if you're ever curious as to how or why a certain energy can be seen as positive, as loving, that's a great resource to look at as well if you're not finding it here. One last deep breath. Maybe one more. I just want to share how much I love bringing these through and sharing with you. I hope you can tell that I am trying to be as real and humble as possible. I don't claim to have a perfect life. I have gone through many challenges and learned many things from those challenges. So I know how painful it can be when we come up against something that is so challenging and can be painful. So I wish you all many blessings, much love. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste, beloveds.